GPT 5.4 and Claude, like current Claude, are measurably falling apart on complex computer use tasks. Zhang et al. Dropped a paper literally 2 days ago quantifying it. They call it reliability collapse on low-frequency interactions. That's not a vibe, that's a number.
And the uncomfortable part is that's the exact use case everyone is deploying these things for right now. Not chatting, doing things.
Okay, so the wild thing is these models aren't failing because they're dumb. They're failing because they were never actually taught what the world looks like underneath. They learned to sound right. That's a different skill than being right.
Which is the whole thread we're pulling on today. RLVR, reinforcement learning from verifiable rewards, and this specific flavor where you anchor it to symbolic execution traces.
Right. So give people 30 seconds on what that actually means before we go further.
Yeah, dumb smart question incoming. What even is a symbolic execution trace and why should anyone care?
So normal RLHF, the stuff behind most current models, rewards outputs that humans rate as plausible. A symbolic execution trace is different. It's a structured log of typed state transitions. Think of it like a receipt from a theorem prover or a code interpreter. The agent doesn't just get told, "good job." It gets shown the exact chain of logical steps that made the answer correct or wrong.
It's the difference between a teacher saying, A+ grade essay, versus showing you every line of your proof and marking exactly where the logic broke.
Right. And the oracle, the thing emitting that trace, could be a constraint solver, a simulator, a code interpreter. It's not a human saying, this feels right. It's a system that literally cannot lie about whether the answer is valid.
Which is why the term is verifiable rewards. The reward signal has a ground truth behind it. That's the meaningful departure from standard RLHF.
And the reason this is a signal right now, not just an interesting research idea, is that the KPsphere report frames this as having crossed from research curiosity toward deployable infrastructure in the last 90 days. That's a fast window, though the grounding layer specifically is still very much in active development.
And the money moved with it. $4 to $5 billion in VC and corporate R&D into RLVR adjacent agent grounding in the trailing 12 months. That's the private sector number. The public NSF number is just over 6 million, which tells you how much of this is happening outside academia.
6 million in tracked public funding, 4+ billion in estimated private flows. That ratio is telling you something about where the real bets are.
OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind, DeepSeek, Qwen, SenseTime, all of them have shipped RLVR-trained reasoning models in 25 and 26, but the symbolic trace grounding layer is still, and this is the exact phrase from the report, a contested frontier.
Which means nobody has won this yet. That's actually the most interesting part.
SenseNova U1 with the NEO Unify architecture is in the mix too. Chinese labs are not observers here.
46% of the 71 research outputs in this analysis are U.S. origin, 12% UK, 4% China, but that number is almost certainly undercounting given how much is unpublished or in preprint.
Okay, so here's what I keep coming back to. Why does this matter to someone who isn't building AI, like actual human stakes?
Because every autonomous agent anyone is betting on, browser agents, coding agents, enterprise workflow automation, all of it depends on the model actually understanding the state of the world it's operating in, not just predicting the next token that sounds like it understands.
The grounding gap is the gap between the model said it clicked the button and the button was actually clicked and the downstream state changed correctly. That gap is currently causing real failures in production systems.
The wild thing is, we've been treating this as a capability problem, like the model needs to be smarter. But Zhang et al.'s framing is that it's a grounding problem. The model doesn't have a reliable internal map of what actions do in the world. More parameters don't fix that. Different training signal does.
Which is exactly what RLVR with symbolic traces is trying to provide. You're not just making the model bigger, you're changing what it learns from.
And the low-frequency interactions failure mode is particularly nasty because those are often the highest-stakes moments. Rare edge cases in a workflow are usually where the consequences are largest.
So the model is most confidently wrong exactly when being wrong matters most. That's a rough profile.
Rachel, walk me through the research distribution quickly, because the funding geography is interesting.
71 papers, 49 funding records, 6.2 million in tracked NSF awards. Iowa State, Nebraska-Lincoln, UC Santa Cruz, University of Oklahoma, South Carolina. These are not the usual suspects. Mid-tier research universities are doing a lot of the foundational symbolic reasoning work.
Which makes sense, actually. The frontier labs are moving too fast to publish. The slower, more methodical symbolic AI work is happening in places that still do peer review on a normal timeline.
There's something almost ironic about that. The theoretical scaffolding for the most powerful AI systems is being built at state schools on NSF grants.
Ironic, or just how science has always worked. Bell Labs needed university math too.
Okay, so broader pattern. Where does this sit in the larger arc?
I think it's an attempt at the inflection from language models as text generators to language models as world-aware agents. That's the transition this technology is trying to enable. Whether it succeeds at general agency is still an open question.
And the symbolic execution trace is specifically interesting because it's a bridge between the statistical and the formal. You're not replacing neural networks with symbolic AI. You're using symbolic verification to shape what the neural network learns.
Neurosymbolic was a term people were using 5 years ago, and it kind of went nowhere. But this feels different because the LLMs are actually good enough now that the symbolic layer doesn't have to carry as much weight. It just has to verify. That's a much more tractable job.
The verification problem is easier than the generation problem. So you use a strong generator and a reliable verifier, and you get something neither could do alone.
Which is also the DeepSeek R1 insight from early 25, right? Verifiable rewards for math reasoning. This is that playbook extended to physical and digital world interaction.
And the contested frontier framing from the report is important here. This is not a solved problem being deployed. It's an active race with no clear leader on the grounding layer specifically.
90 days from research curiosity toward deployable infrastructure is the signal. That's the pace we're talking about, at least in the narrow domains where verifiers are mature.
The next 6 months are going to tell us a lot about whether symbolic trace grounding becomes the standard training stack or whether someone finds a shortcut that makes it unnecessary.
My read is, there is no shortcut. The grounding problem is fundamental. You can't token predict your way to reliable agency.
Strong take, I'm mostly there.
I put 60% on Rachel being right and 40% on someone at a frontier lab surprising us with something that looks like a shortcut but is actually just a better oracle in disguise.
That's not a disagreement. That's just a restatement of my position with hedge language.
Okay, takeaway. If you're watching the AI agent space, the question is not whether agents will be deployed at scale. That's happening. The question is whether they'll be grounded in actual world models or whether we'll just be running very expensive autocomplete on top of our infrastructure and hoping it works.
RLVR with symbolic traces is the most credible current answer to that question, and the money knows it.
Full 160 source deep research report is at kpsphere.com/research. This has been the Signal Update.
Subscribe wherever you listen. 3 of these a week. See you next one.